This episode is brought to you by Nebula, the only place where you can watch our season finale, the Patrick H. Willems Star Wars Holiday Special, coming December 18th. Watching the 1990 NASCAR drama Days of Thunder, you wouldn't think that this was such an overblown, out-of-control disaster that it killed an entire era of American filmmaking. Tom Cruise drives cars good hardly seems like a harbinger of doom. If you look at movies like Heaven's Gate or Waterworld and hear that those productions were chaotic disasters that went way over budget, you get it. When you hear that making Apocalypse Now almost drove Francis Ford Coppola insane, and you see that movie, you get it. You look at Fitzcarraldo and hear that people died making it, and you get it. But you look at Days of Thunder and you think, yeah, sure, this is a normal, slick, formulaic Hollywood movie about car racing. But it's not normal. See, this was a movie whose production was such a train wreck, such an exorbitant, costly folly, that it derailed the careers of the most powerful producers in Hollywood, and in the end, killed an entire era of movies. By the time Cole Trickle crossed the finish line in the Daytona 500, the 1980s were truly over. In a video from earlier this season, we tried to define what an 80s movie really is. If you have a spare 90 minutes or so, you should go check it out, but in case you don't, well, we found that 80s movies were really a combination of certain aesthetics, themes, music, and cinematic trends. And we determined that the movie that most embodied all of those things, the most 80s movie ever made, was Rocky IV. But some of the movies that came the closest were ones that came from the team that largely defined what we think of as 80s cinema. The producing team of Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. Simpson started as an executive at Paramount Pictures, where he developed his formula for what he called the high-concept movie, a formula that would create several of the biggest, most influential era-defining movies of the decade. Their successes made Simpson and Bruckheimer two of the most powerful people in Hollywood. And then, at the end of the decade, with one movie, it all came crashing down.
Excuse me, sorry, excuse me.
Emma, you just walked through the shot.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get the set ready in time for the holiday special.
You're building the set?
It's all hands on deck. Plus, it feels like we haven't had many crew members since you got Nobbles fired.
Emma, you're the only crew member we've ever had. Also, I didn't get Nobbles fired. Dave gave him a temporary role out in the office while they find a new full-time position for him.
Nobbles, you're the best in-office barista ever.
Yay!
Frankly, I think his milk steaming is subpar.
Well, it's gonna be a long day building the Christmas set. But we're all really excited to hear you talk about Star Wars, your sworn enemy of topics. How is that script coming along?
It's definitely written. Yeah, I mean, like the outline I think is really strong. Has structure to it, and I have like a lot more notes in my notes app. And so as soon as the Days of Thunder episode is done, I'll polish it up and send it over.
Cool. Also, I hope you don't mind if I occasionally use the circular saw.
Anyway, for today's episode.
Oh, I'm sorry. You weren't rolling now, were you?
Welcome to the last regular episode of the season, and this time around, I am very excited to announce that there is no sidekick in sight.
Well, I'm kind of your sidekick.
Emma, you're a full-fledged member of the team.
So does that mean I can get paid more?
That is a great topic to discuss in 2024. But anyway, here we are at the end of 2023, and since it's the end of the year and the end of the season, I wanted to do an episode that tied together thematically some of the things that we've talked about this season. A year ago, we discussed the idea of the high-concept movie pioneered by producer Don Simpson in the 1980s. And we've spent the past 5 months or so discussing things like the decline of modern mainstream American cinema, the contentification of art, the death of original mid-budget movies, the death of the movie star, feel-good topics that the whole family enjoys. I mean, right now, the latest Marvel Studios release might end its theatrical run without even reaching $100 million domestic. The kind of thing that makes you wonder if we're truly at the end of an era, a turning point in modern American film history. And so, I wanted to look at another turning point from 33 years ago, when one movie represented the death of a decade of cinema. What we think of as 80s cinema really did begin right in 1980, since that was the year that the dark, morally complicated New Hollywood era abruptly ended. The turning point that's commonly pointed to is Michael Cimino's epic 1980 Western, Heaven's Gate, which went so grossly over budget and bombed so hard that it actually destroyed the studio that financed it, United Artists. That movie became the scapegoat for a change in Hollywood as the auteur-driven 70s gave way to an era of stricter studio control, as commercial viability came to outweigh artistic expression. The go-go Reaganomics of the 80s came to Hollywood. As Francis Ford Coppola put it, there was a kind of coup d'etat that happened after Heaven's Gate, started by Paramount. It was a time when the studios were outraged that the cost of movies was going up so rapidly, that directors were making such incredible amounts of money and had all the control, so they took the control back. And one of the executives of this new regime at Paramount was a man named Don Simpson. Alongside Michael Eisner and Barry Diller, he instituted a policy in which the movies they greenlit had to have simple concepts that could easily be sold in a 30-second TV spot. They needed to be flashy and quick, because remember, they were competing for audience attention with The Time to Make the Donuts guy, who arguably had more depth and shading than any gritty 70s movie. Don't even get me started on the Where's the Beef Lady. The new Paramount regime was about making directors secondary to the producers, pulling new young directors from the world of TV commercials, slick stylists who could make a product look glamorous, and who were used to just taking orders from the client and executing their vision. Now, to be fair, it wasn't just Heaven's Gate that killed the 70s era of Hollywood. That's the simple narrative. A change had already been happening for a few years, something that Quentin Tarantino identifies in his book, Cinema Speculation. He writes, "Regular moviegoers were becoming weary of modern American movies. The darkness, the drug use, the embrace of sensation, the violence, the sex, and the sexual violence. But even more than that, they became weary of the anti-everything cynicism. Was everything a bummer? Was everything a drag? Was every movie about some guy with problems?" And so, in the late 70s, when Star Wars and in particular Rocky came along, audiences were thrilled to finally get some catharsis, to finally win. Like, Rocky doesn't even actually win at the end of the first movie, but that's how hungry audiences were. Just getting close was enough to get them excited. And this is what Simpson understood. As Linda Obst, the producer who originally brought the Flashdance script to Simpson, said, Don invented the high-concept formula for the 80s. Announce the big idea in the first act and resolve it in the next 2 acts, often with a contest. All his successes are built on that formula. And so you look at Flashdance and you look at Top Gun, and it's clear. They are about contests. Ambitious people trying to be the best and winning. These were the perfect movies for the era that would also give us Rocky IV. Okay, so let's talk about Don. Don Simpson, who died of a heart attack in 1996 at the age of 52, was one of the most colorful characters in Hollywood history. He produced some of the biggest movies of his time, while also leading a truly depraved, Caligula-esque life. To put it this way, if Don Simpson was a character in a Hellraiser movie, he would be well on his way to completing the Lament configuration. If I were to describe some of the stuff in his biography, high concept, this video would get demonetized. But to give you an idea, here is a relatively normal, pretty chill Don Simpson story. In 1981, while being interviewed by a writer for The Hollywood Reporter, when he saw it was 4 o'clock, Simpson said, "You know what I like to do at 4 o'clock? I like to pour myself a big drink, lay out a few lines, and abuse a screenwriter. Take a seat." Simpson then drank 4 fingers of Macallan Scotch, snorted 6 lines of cocaine, and called a screenwriter on the phone, telling him, quote, "You're the stupidest son of a bitch in Hollywood, you asshole. You're a talentless piece of shit. No one respects you. Everyone knows you're an idiot. You have no fucking future in this business." End quote. He literally did this while being interviewed. I mean, say what you will about the guy, but you have to respect that dedication to a schedule. As Jeff Berg, Hollywood agent and friend of Simpson, said, quote, "Don can be, at times, functionally psychotic." In 1982, after 2 years as president of production at Paramount, his behavior, such as throwing tantrums and kicking dents into people's cars, and his escalating drug use, leading to him passing out during board meetings, led his boss, Michael Eisner, to finally fire him. I know, I'm as shocked as you are. Simpson was given a production deal, and everyone expected that he would quickly fail. But instead, he teamed up with up-and-coming producer Jerry Bruckheimer, and together, they made Flashdance, which became one of the most profitable movies of the decade. Simpson was living out the American dream of getting absolutely shit-faced at work and being rewarded for it. What's fun about watching all the Simpson-Bruckheimer movies is seeing how rigidly they adhere to certain rules, which were apparently imposed by Simpson. Every movie starts with an opening title sequence set to an original pop single recorded for the movie. What a Feeling in Flashdance, The Heat Is On in Beverly Hills Cop, Just Imagine in Thief of Hearts, Shakedown in Beverly Hills Cop 2, and wait, what was the one in Top Gun again? Right. Thank you, Mr. Loggins. In the first act, there's a big incident with an iconic visual. The bucket of water in Flashdance or the inverted flying in Top Gun. Then there's the point late in the second act where the hero has a personal crisis, often involving the death of someone close to them, like Goose in Top Gun. And then we have the triumphant ending and, very important,
every one of their movies ends on a freeze frame.
You know it, Emma. The movies themselves often feel like a series of music videos. Every few minutes, there's a gorgeously shot montage set to the various songs from the soundtrack, designed for maximum synergy to boost record sales and in turn, have the movie promoted on MTV. And look, I like most of these movies. Flashdance may be as narratively threadbare as a movie can get, but the music rules and it's a fun time. I rewatched Beverly Hills Cop the other day as research for this. It's still perfect. And throughout the 80s, countless movies, from Purple Rain to The Karate Kid, would adhere to the high concept formula and find huge success. In a 1985 interview, Simpson said, "We are not of the old school and not of the new school, but of our own school. The school of filmmaking, not producing." Bruckheimer added, "We are as much a part of the process as the director." In Roger Ebert's review of Days of Thunder, he observed that what we now know as the Don Simpson high concept formula had seemingly been adopted by Tom Cruise. Ebert writes, "Days of Thunder is an entertaining example of what we might as well call the Tom Cruise picture, since it assembles most of the same elements that worked in Top Gun, The Color of Money, and Cocktail, and runs them through the formula once again. Parts of the plot are beginning to wear out their welcome, but the key ingredients are still effective. They include: number 1, The Cruise character, invariably a young and naive but naturally talented kid who could be the best if ever he could tame his rambunctious spirit. Number 2, the mentor, an older man who has done it himself and has been there before and knows talent when he sees it, and who has faith in the kid even when the kid screws up because his free spirit has gotten the best of him. Number 3, the superior woman, usually older, taller, and more mature than the Cruise character, who functions as a mentor for his spirit, while the male mentor supervises his craft. Number 4, the craft, which the gifted young man must master. Number 5, the arena, in which the young man is tested. Number 6, the arcana, consisting of the specialized knowledge and lore that the movie knows all about and we get to learn. Number 7, the trail, a journey to visit the principal places where the masters of the craft test one another. Number 8, the proto-enemy, the bad guy in the opening reels of the movie who provides the hero with an opponent to practice on. At first, the Cruise character and the proto-enemy dislike each other, but eventually, through a baptism of fire, they learn to love one another. And number 9, the eventual enemy, a real bad guy who turns up in the closing reels to provide the hero with a test of his skill, his learning ability, his love, his craft, and his knowledge of the arena and the arcana. My theory is that Cruise, who speaks often in interviews about how he spent the 80s trying to learn everything from experienced people in the industry, learned this formula from Simpson and adopted it as a smart career choice. After Days of Thunder, he stopped making these kinds of movies. The closest he came was probably the first Mission Impossible, but in that one, his older mentor turned out to be the villain, and Cruise has to kill him.
And then in Jerry Maguire, he subverts and evolves the high concept premise. He's a guy who's cocky and talented, who's humbled, but instead of proving that, yeah, he really is the best, like in Top Gun or Days of Thunder, here he finds fulfillment in his new life and leaves his old one behind.
Yeah, you're totally right. But anyway, that happened years later, so don't worry about it for now, because right now, it is time to talk about Days of Thunder. On February 1st, 1990, Paramount Pictures announced an unprecedented partnership with Simpson and Bruckheimer. Paramount promised them a production fund of $300 million over 5 years to make any 5 movies they wanted. And they made the announcement of this visionary alliance with full-page print ads in industry papers that read as follows. I'm gonna read the whole thing because it's nuts. From the premise to the premiere, from the first draft to the last detail, from the first shot to the millionth cassette, Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer are total filmmakers. It began with the landmark blockbuster Flashdance. Then came 3 of the biggest hits of all time: Beverly Hills Cop, Top Gun, and Beverly Hills Cop 2. And from these, 2 Academy Awards, 10 Academy Award nominations, 14 top 10 songs, 4 #1 soundtrack albums, 4 #1 songs, 4 multi-platinum albums, 4 #1 videos. Paramount Pictures is pleased and proud to announce a new 5-year alliance with Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer as they enter a new era of producing and directing at the studio they call home. Here, Simpson and Bruckheimer clearly brand themselves as the auteurs, the visionaries, and they also seem to imply that they're going to start directing. This was the biggest deal any producers had ever had. They had total creative control. They didn't even need to submit scripts or budgets for approval. They could hire and cast anyone they wanted. And for the first of their 5 movies, they picked Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder started with an idea from Tom Cruise, who has the only writing credit in his entire career on this movie, since he developed the original story. Simpson brought on his friend Robert Towne to write the final script. Towne, of course, being the Oscar-winning writer of Chinatown and one of the most successful, acclaimed writers in the industry. And of course, Tony Scott, The man who gave us Top Gun and Beverly Hills Cop 2 once again returned to direct. The plan was simple. The entire team behind Top Gun, the biggest movie of 1986, reunites to do it again, but this time, it's about car racing. It's like Ice Cube said in 22 Jump Street.
It's the same case. Do the same thing.
No, but they didn't do that. This movie went right off the rails.
Emma, what are you doing? I was just getting to that.
I know, I just love Days of Thunder. Remember I suggested we do a video about this earlier in the year?
Yeah, that's why we're doing this now.
Okay, I'll let you get back to it. Just had to do it the 1 week I'm busy.
So Top Gun had a budget of $19 million, which was just slightly above the average cost of studio movies at the time. Days of Thunder started with a budget of $40 million, and by the end of production, that had ballooned to $70 million. Now, this was not because of complicated cutting-edge visual effects or giant elaborate sets. This was not Titanic, where they had to build a giant fake boat and shoot in a water tank for a year. This was just a pretty normal movie about like people talking in rooms or outside and then some car racing scenes. Why the hell would this cost more than 3.5 times as much as Top Gun, a movie about jets doing aerial combat? Well, here's what an article about the production from Spy magazine that summer said. Theoretically, the director directs, the writer rewrites as requested, and the producers make sure everything runs smoothly. But on the set of Days of Thunder, Scott couldn't set up a shot without Simpson or Bruckheimer, or Simpson and Bruckheimer, or Simpson, Bruckheimer, and Town yammering and waving hands and generally meddling. So as the weeks ground on, there seemed to be 4 directors arguing with one another. The cameras didn't roll, and the crew, which was getting paid for 20-hour days, racked up a vast amount of overtime. Many crew members said they made so much money that they could afford to take 16 weeks of vacation when the film finally wrapped at the end of May. Also, off topic, but this was the cover to that issue of Spy magazine? Man, 33 years and nothing changes. Simpson ensured that the Days of Thunder production was a continuous party. He had 2 assistants instructed to maintain a steady supply of cocaine. 2, meaning should the first cocaine supply assistant be unable to perform his duties, don't worry, there's a backup cocaine supply assistant. Those assistants would also be assigned to find attractive women at local beaches in Daytona to invite to the private parties Simpson would throw at local clubs almost nightly, sometimes featuring performances by Tone Loc, and bartenders presumably serving up plenty of funky cold Medina. Simpson also kept a closet in the production office filled with Donna Karan dresses to give to the women that he would sleep with. But the funniest part is that Simpson and Bruckheimer spent $1 million of the budget building a flashy private gym with a giant neon Days of Thunder sign that was visible from the beach. Now this gym served 2 purposes. Number 1, attract women. And number 2, for Simpson to stay in shape for his acting role in the movie. You see, Simpson didn't just want to be viewed as the true visionary behind the movie, he also wanted to be a star as well. A couple years earlier, he had tried to get cast in the movie Beaches, but now that this was his production, he could demand a character be written into the script for him to play. Simpson is the second character to appear in the movie. Just 2 minutes in, the Daytona announcer introduces Aldo Benedetti, another driver in the race. What was originally written and shot as a pretty significant supporting part eventually got reduced to a single line of dialogue and just a handful of shots.
I'm glad he's well enough to come back, and I hope I beat him at the same time.
According to co-editor Billy Weber, it was crews who insisted that Simpson's footage get cut, showing that, even back then, crews really had a good head for filmmaking. In the final race of the movie, there's a part that happens so fast you can barely catch it, where Simpson's character's car gets hit and his engine immediately explodes, causing a big crash. As an accidental meta-commentary on the production and Simpson's career, I gotta say, this is objectively hilarious.
Hey, Patrick, can I get a copy of the holiday special script? Ben's lawyers want to take a read through it before he'll sign a release.
Yeah, I'll have it to you soon.
Good, we got a lot of writing on this one.
Hey, Dave, is your voice okay?
Yeah, it was karaoke night last night, and they had me and Nobbles do Total Eclipse of the Heart 3 times in a row. That guy can sing.
Wait, you did karaoke last night with
Hey, y'all. How's the shoot going in here? Anyone want a Nobblecino?
Nobbles, you bitch.
Dave, I got a special turmeric and honey latte with your name on it. Should do wonders for your sore throat.
Oh, wow, that is really good. And it's already working. Nobbles, you are the king of baristas. That should be the show. That's what we should do, a scripted comedy about everyone's favorite content gobbler working at a coffee shop. Just like that other famous show. Cheers.
Scripted content on Nebula? Starring me?
Wait, Nobbles gets his own Okay. Anyway, where was I? Days of Thunder, in many ways, adheres rigidly to the high concept formula, specifically the structure of Top Gun. Cruise plays another talented but cocky guy who operates powerful vehicles, who gets brought up to the big leagues and faces off against a skilled rival who eventually becomes his friend. In the middle of the movie, there's an accident that shakes his confidence and ability to drive, and finally, in the third act, he gets past this and proves that he is the best and he wins. But it deviates from the formula in some odd ways. Top Gun is narratively not a very elegant movie, but the setup is extremely clean. In the first scene, it establishes Maverick as a skilled but cocky pilot. When another guy has an accident, Maverick takes his place at the Naval Fighter Weapons School, where he then tries to be the best. In comparison, the setup for Days of Thunder is oddly convoluted. After the racing season has already begun, the head of one racing team just decides to get another car, so he goes to a retired car builder played by Robert Duvall and convinces him to build another car. Duvall had quit a year earlier to avoid being investigated when a driver he worked with died, but that is immediately glossed over. And then they hire this skilled but arrogant driver, Cruise, who has never driven stock cars before and soon reveals that he doesn't actually know anything about cars. While so much of Top Gun is about the love story between Tom Cruise and Kelly McGillis, with scene after scene of them growing closer as Berlin's Take My Breath Away plays over and over until they finally kiss, the romance in Days of Thunder is almost an afterthought. It's not introduced until 45 minutes in, and then the characters get together after 2 scenes, one of which is Cruise confusing Nicole Kidman for a prostitute. It's only really interesting because it's Nicole Kidman, and this is where she and Cruise met and began their decade-long real-life romance. And this is a good place to mention that Tom Cruise's character in this movie is named Cole Trickle, a name that sounds almost like a venereal disease. And as crazy as that name is, it actually seems a lot less crazy when you consider that the inspiration for the name is real-life NASCAR driver Dick Trickle, which definitely sounds like a venereal disease. The biggest thing that Days of Thunder discards from the Simpson-Bruckheimer high-concept playbook is actually the soundtrack. Now, to be clear, there is a killer score by Hans Zimmer.
Amazing score.
See, there can be no argument. The score is an absolute banger, but the movie is not loaded wall to wall with original pop needle drops like all their other movies. Like Top Gun, it does open with a sunset montage of the place where the action happens, but here it's set to the film score, not an original song. There are barely any montages, and you don't leave the movie remembering any of the songs. There's no Kenny Loggins. Or if there is, I didn't catch it. It feels like they wanted to simultaneously recreate Top Gun exactly, but they also wanted it to be taken more seriously, and so they discarded the music video-like montages that powered their other movies. During the production, Tony Scott said, "Everybody's been trying to stamp it top car, but what we've all tried to make clear is that this is a character-oriented movie where Top Gun was a concept-oriented picture. The differences will become fairly clear when you see the movie." Okay, that's all well and good, but when you think of Top Gun or Flashdance, what parts come to mind first? The volleyball scene, set to Playing with the Boys. The dance scene, set to Maniac. The other dance scene, set to What a Feeling. The opening montage, set to Danger Zone. Cruise riding his motorcycle and making out with McGillis as Take My Breath Away plays. It's these moments where the narrative doesn't really matter, just the catchy song driving powerful, sexy visuals. Days of Thunder stays focused on the narrative, which it turns out is a lot less interesting than just watching hot people dance and kiss and play volleyball. But folks, don't worry, because it absolutely does end on a freeze frame. Actually, it ends on one of the goofiest, best freeze frame endings of all time. I mean, just look at this. Look at their expressions. Look at how Duvall is running. It's so silly. I love it. Simpson and Bruckheimer wanted this to be another perfect piece of hyper-capitalist cinema that would become as popular as Top Gun. It is more loaded with product placement than a Michael Bay Transformers movie, but they also wanted it to be taken more seriously as a piece of art, now with an Oscar-winning writer, a newly Oscar-nominated star, and no more MTV-style montages. And Simpson also wanted it to make him a movie star, and they wanted it to score them lots of chicks and give them the satisfaction of beating their rivals, Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg, at the box office. And unsurprisingly, it turned out that doing all those things was basically impossible. Most of all, beating Katzenberg. I mean, he created Quibi. The man doesn't miss. There's a hilarious irony that this movie is about, as Nicole Kidman's character diagnoses them, infantile egomaniacs, driving their powerful, out-of-control machines, with one of them having a crash so bad that it ends his career. That is kind of a perfect metaphor for the making of the movie itself. But okay, let's talk about Tony Scott for a minute. Simpson and Bruckheimer did their best to brand themselves as the main auteurs of the movie, with Tony Scott as just a hired gun there to make it look real good. But this movie actually crystallized what would come to define Tony Scott movies in the decades ahead. Days of Thunder is the first pure example of the main recurring theme of his work: mentors and students. While Top Gun was focused on the romance between Cruise's Maverick and Kelly McGillis's Charlie, and the rivalry between Maverick and Iceman, the main story in Days of Thunder is the relationship between Cole Trickle and Harry Hogg, played by Robert Duvall, who teaches him about cars and becomes a father figure. Tony came to the film industry following in the footsteps of his older brother Ridley, saying, "Ridley's a father figure. He's always coaxed and guided me through trials and tribulations in my life, and I've always looked to him." And as Robert Arnett identified in his essay, Understanding Tony Scott, this relationship became the key to Tony's authorial identity. This mentor-student relationship would recur in Enemy of the State, Spy Game, Man on Fire, Domino, and ultimately, Unstoppable, his final film. And just like Unstoppable, in Days of Thunder, this main relationship, people from different generations, happens around and through powerful machinery. Scott's final collaboration with Simpson would be Crimson Tide, a movie about two men from different generations fighting for control of a nuclear submarine. Now, I'm sure this was totally unintentional, but that is a great metaphor for the making of Days of Thunder. Even though Scott seems to have had little to say with this movie, it started as Cruise's idea, then was driven by Simpson and Bruckheimer, and written by the biggest writer in Hollywood, you can draw a straight line from Days of Thunder through nearly every movie he made for the rest of his career. Days of Thunder started production with a release date set, but no finished script. It would be written and rewritten throughout the entire production as the release date got pushed back 3 times. Now you'd think this would be a cautionary tale, but instead, it's still how countless modern blockbusters get made. It's like jumping out of an airplane without packing your parachute, but people keep insisting, it's fine, I can pack it during freefall. Guys, just pack it beforehand. Now look, plenty of movies have gone over budget and over schedule and had extremely difficult productions, but sometimes that movie turns out to be Titanic, and so it all seems worth it. This was not Titanic, but more significantly, it was not Top Gun. It cost 3.5 times more than Top Gun and made less than half as much. Paramount didn't come close to making back what they spent on it, and by the end of the year, it would be trashed at the box office by smaller movies like Home Alone or Ghost, which some would argue are better movies, but I think that's like comparing apples and oranges. If those oranges cost $70 million and were grown by a farmer with 2 cocaine assistants. 5 months after Days of Thunder was released, Paramount announced that it was terminating its exclusive production agreement with Simpson and Bruckheimer, saying, "The environment for motion picture production has changed." A polite way of saying, that was a fucking disaster and we don't ever want to do it again. Days of Thunder was the peak of hyper-capitalist 80s cinema, chock full of product placement and brand partnerships. It's visually ultra-glamorous and engineered to be simultaneously crowd-pleasing and inspiring. It is a deeply cynical movie. Its only reasons for existing were to let Cruise drive a race car, help Simpson become a movie star, and money. And yet, watching it here at the tail end of 2023, compared to our modern understanding of hyper-capitalist cinema, it almost feels like a unique and beautiful work of art. Compare this to something like Uncharted or a Disney live-action remake. Look at how gorgeous and powerful every frame that Tony Scott and cinematographer Ward Russell create are. The racing scenes have incredible visual energy, an upgrade from the Top Gun flight scenes, because they can do more with the camera here since the scenes are on the ground. And just look at the way that Nicole Kidman's giant hair catches that backlight. Look at the cast. You got John C. Reilly and Michael Rooker hanging out with Robert Duvall. Randy Quaid is there. Carrie Elwes perfectly cast as Cruise's new rival. The movie is fascinatingly strange. Like literally the first moment that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman share on screen ever is him thinking she's a sex worker and putting her hand on his crotch. And you get the extra meta context of this being the movie where the two of them met. Thanks to Days of Thunder, we would get Eyes Wide Shut, one of the best movies ever made, as well as this, one of the best photos ever taken. Also, it has Robert Duvall talking poetically to cars, and again, that last freeze frame. Is Days of Thunder a great movie? No, it's not. But I think it's better now than it was at the time, and it did what it really needed to do. It killed the Don Simpson era right when it had reached its peak, and was getting to be a bit much. And arguably more importantly, it would go on to inspire great works of art, like the Simpsons episode Saturdays of Thunder, as well as one of Christopher Nolan's favorite movies, Talladega Nights. In a 1993 LA Times interview, Simpson said, "I could make another Beverly Hills Cop right now, but I've gotten politicized in my 40s. I'm trying to make a movie about something." Among other things, he is exploring hard-edged and controversial themes about smart women and the sexual politics of the 90s. I'm just gonna say, it's probably for the best that he didn't make a movie about those things, considering that a few years earlier, a former secretary had already filed an emotional distress suit against him, alleging that he verbally abused her, ordered her to clean up his leftover traces of cocaine, and arrange his appointments with sex workers. But Simpson said, I'm trying to grow up. Like all quasi-human beings, we change." When Simpson and Bruckheimer got back up and running in the mid-90s and re-teamed with Tony Scott, they stopped trying to backseat drive and actually let him direct Crimson Tide, which is probably the best movie of his career. That same year, Bruckheimer finally decided he'd had enough and it was time to part ways with Simpson. 6 months later, Simpson was dead. Days of Thunder marked the end of what we know as the 80s movie. The ultra-slick, producer-driven, music video-like story of a hyper-individualistic protagonist proving they're the best around and that nothing's ever gonna bring them down. The blockbusters of the 90s were more about regular people and the collective humanity. Movies like Jurassic Park, The Fugitive, Independence Day, Forrest Gump, or Titanic. And that even goes for the movies that Bruckheimer would produce after Simpson's death, like Armageddon, about blue-collar people saving the world. While things didn't quite return to the director-driven 70s, a new wave of indie auteurs would break through to the mainstream, like the Coen brothers, Quentin Tarantino, Gus Van Sant, or John Singleton. By the time Days of Thunder opened, the Berlin Wall had fallen and the Cold War was basically over. America had thoroughly won and no longer needed to win vicariously through its movies. Later in 1990, Rocky V opened and flopped, making a fraction of what Rocky IV had made. And probably the biggest change of all actually began the year before Days of Thunder with the release of Batman. This flashy, prestigious packaging of a famous IP that would, in the early 2000s, become the dominant formula for blockbuster movies and basically create the modern cinematic landscape. So now, as I reflect back on Days of Thunder, I have to make my favorite analogy in the world. In the 90s, there was a wave of bands in the UK, guitar-driven rock groups that made some very catchy tunes that defined an era of music that became known as Britpop. Among the most popular bands were Blur, Pulp, and the most successful of them all, Oasis. Oasis's second album, What's the Story, Morning Glory, was released in 1995 and basically dominated the world. After all, it had Wonderwall. And then, fueled by massive egos and even more massive amounts of cocaine, Oasis made a third album, which spun wildly out of control. The recordings were a disaster, they got kicked out of multiple studios for their terrible behavior, and the final result was an album of astonishing excess, where nearly every track was at least 7 minutes long, with 50 layers of guitar overdubs that drowned out the entire orchestras that they also had on there. The music videos featured fleets of military helicopters. It was called Be Here Now, and when it was released in August 1997, it became the fastest-selling album in UK history. And then, very quickly, everyone kind of went, yeah, this is a bit much. I think we're done here. And the Britpop era abruptly ended. Oasis went away for 3 years and 2 members quit the band. Blur and Pulp changed their whole sounds and went in a less mainstream direction. The Verve broke up. Be Here Now effectively killed that crazy era of excess. So what I'm saying here is, Days of Thunder is the Be Here Now of movies. And I honestly kind of like them both. The 80s began with Heaven's Gate, a disastrous production that spun out of control and killed the era of auteur-driven movies. And in its wake, Don Simpson, alongside other Paramount executives, stepped in and began a new era of studio control. And exactly 10 years later, Simpson, now as an independent producer, had his very own Heaven's Gate and killed the era he helped begin.
Patrick, what are you still doing here? We have to clear out the studio so they can build the holiday set.
Oh yeah, I'm just finishing up now. Actually, hey Dave, can you believe it's been a whole year of me shooting videos here in the studio? So many memories.
Yeah, maybe save the nostalgia for the special.
Well, look, I think I've been doing a pretty solid job, all things considered, right?
I would say you've chipped away at a tiny corner of the mountain of debt left by your evil doppelganger.
And made brand new friends along the way.
No one was talking to you, Nobbles. Look, I'm just saying that considering all of the quality, hard work that I've been putting in, maybe I should also have a scripted show on Nebula. You know, it could be the next Frasier.
Yeah, The TV revival that critics and audiences can't stop raving about. Look, just finish the special and then we'll talk.
Happy holidays, Patrick.
Hey Patrick, how'd the shoot go?
Finally done with the last episode of the season. Oh, can you grab me one of those? Thank you.
Can you believe we've lived here a whole year and we're not even a quarter of the way through Matt's fancy wine?
I can't believe it's been a whole year and we still have to stay at Matt Torpey's spare apartment. It feels like all of 2023 we've just been scrambling, like barely keeping our heads above water. But I mean, I don't know, how's your musical coming along?
It's emotional. It turns out writing an epic culmination of your entire life through song, dance, and spoken verse is very difficult. But we've been laying some good groundwork, haven't we?
You know what, yeah, we have.
So we keep at it. And maybe this is the year that things start going our way.
Yes. Like maybe your musical has a successful off-Broadway run, which turns into a successful on-Broadway run, which turns into a major motion picture that you then distance yourself from because of creative differences.
And maybe your channel blows up, you get out of debt, you finally buy a desk, and people on the subway stop asking, what do I know that guy from? Because they know what they know you from.
Yes, and then Vanity Fair profiles where they let us keep the expensive clothes from the photo shoot.
Or maybe our endeavors are complete disasters and our careers are ruined and we're left to live in financial destitution. Anyway, at least your holiday special should be good.
Oh shit, I still have to write that. Hello, I'm sitting in the same place I was in the last scene. Anyway, I'm here to say, in case you missed our announcement in the last episode, that our season finale, coming Monday, December 18th, is the Patrick H. Willems Star Wars Holiday Special. We have been working on this for months, and I am so excited about this truly insane thing that we've made. It's half 1960s style TV Christmas special with musical numbers and special guests, and half video essay about Star Wars, the thing that I swore years ago to never do again, but hey, I guess it turned out that I had new things to say. This holiday special is available exclusively on Nebula, my streaming platform where you can also watch my movie, Night of the Coconut, or all of our bonus companion episodes like the recent one where I sample the liquors owned by The Rock and Ryan Reynolds. The goal of Nebula is to be the place where creators are able to make the big, ambitious projects that we couldn't make on our own, or that wouldn't work on YouTube. So like this holiday special would not exist without Nebula since they gave us the budget and support necessary to like build our whole big set. If you've been thinking about joining Nebula, I would say now is the perfect time. If you want to join just for a month to watch the holiday special, that's totally cool. You'll get your money's worth, I promise. The best value is actually the annual plan, which comes out to only $250 per month. Or, for the month of December, we have lifetime plans available, for those of you who can justify it financially and really want to support what we're doing. Because money from the lifetime plans, especially if you use my link down in the description, goes directly toward funding future original projects. And I have some stuff that is already greenlit that I am really excited about.
Hey, are the ad reads canon?
No, they're not. So anyway, the Patrick H. Willems Star Wars Holiday Special is coming Monday, December 18th to Nebula. I am so excited about this thing, and I really hope you check it out. Roll the trailer.
Patrick, we think that your holiday special has the potential to harken back to those classic holiday specials of the 1960s and the 1970s, and we think that you are just the man to bring that kind of holiday magic into the homes of people around the world.
30 seconds until showtime, everyone.
Hello and welcome to the Patrick H. Willems Holiday Special. Ah yes, nothing like building a fire with your own two hands. Why, it's Emma!
You shouldn't speak ill of Star Wars around Life Day, or you might invoke the curse of George Lucas.
Sounds like a lot of superstitious tomfoolery, if you ask me.
This is all about supernatural forces.
Complaining about Star Wars is a time-honored tradition.
Did somebody say holiday razzle-dazzle?
Chloe! Mom! Dave, are you kidding me? Wait, did you say destroyed?
More like eviscerated.